to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Great Scott! Keep going!
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Sean.
Hello.
And Derek.
Hello.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
And on this episode, we'll be talking about They Live, the seminal 1988 John Carpenter Rowdy Roddy Piper vehicle that was about capitalism and movies and mullets.
And some good jeans, too. Awesome denim.
Some high quality denim that can last in, like thrown through glass windows and down the side of a cliff, and then some quality plaid shirts, and the best alley fight scene of all time.
Keith David is awesome in this, too.
Well,
He's just fun to watch.
Oh, Keith David's always awesome.
Yeah.
Except for when he's doing all the voiceovers for commercials now.
Well, he used to do. I think he did some for
Hey,
Halo.
that last season of Community he was in, he was awesome in that.
Yeah, still need to watch that.
Yeah, he was really good in it. Really funny.
And before we get to the main event, not the wrestling event, just the actual movie They Live, we will go through some things we've been watching, some site news, and some general movie news. So to start off, I know every week we've been following up with Scream. Did anybody else watch it this week?
Nope.
Well, I've now fallen off. I am going to catch up on with it, though.
So this week was more just like table setting, trying to get you interested in who the killer is and giving you more red herrings as to who it might be. And it has to be noted that with the exception of like 3 or 4 people, everyone in the show is a terrible, terrible actor. And like I would assume a lot of people have fallen off at this point from watching it because this is the 3rd consecutive episode without anyone getting killed. And it's all been about research, which could work if everyone's, really good actors and, compelling and drives the action. But it's definitely not that. So,
Yeah.
And then, but like MTV's asked for the next episode, it's like the craziest kill of the series. So we'll get to see how that plays out and if it's actually going to bring anybody back in or.
Yeah, I'll definitely catch up. And at this point, because you said there's 10 episodes, right?
Yeah.
So what episode was this week?
6.
6? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've made it halfway through. I might as well go the rest of the way. It's been a long 5 episodes that I've watched so far, though.
I've watched one. Just just the one.
So that's Scream. So if you haven't been watching it right now, I wouldn't really recommend jumping in. So we'll see because I know Ty West directs one of the later episodes, so see how that one turns out. But as it is, and actually, we were watching earlier something from The Soup. They're making fun of this past week's episode of Scream because there's a scene where one of the characters tries to open a door and it just has like the chain slide lock, and she tries to open the door and then just like pulls on it twice and then just runs to the other door when all she had to do is just slide over the lock and open the door. It's like, oh fuck, I can't pull this slide lock.
She's too young. Those locks aren't from her generation.
Hey, Jamie Lee Curtis punched out a glass window to take a broom off of a door handle in Halloween.
It's like kids having to use those rotary phones.
Oh shit!
Well, and
Have you seen that video? Like kids, whatever when they show kids stuff like the old Ninja Turtle movies and different things, they show them a rotary phone and they have no idea. And they're talking about the guys like, how do you think you text on this? And then they trying to figure it out. And they're like, you can't text on that.
Yeah.
Like one of the videos of them playing like NES games, and they just like, I just feel bad for these kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, we had a great time playing them.
They probably felt bad for us.
Yeah.
Like, oh God, I can't believe I had to deal with this.
You mean you couldn't just hold down the button on the phone and say, Siri, call my parents. You actually have to go 1 da 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 1 da 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 da. But going back to Halloween, the scene where Jamie Lee Curtis has to bust out the window to get the I think it's a rake off the door handle to get out. What's funny is the video I did last week was a soundtrack swap of Halloween and The Guest. So if you've seen both of those movies, definitely go check that out.
Yeah, major spoilers for The Guest, and that's a good movie. So, and it's on Netflix now. So watch that film and then watch the video.
Yeah. I mean, actually, though, I saw some advertisements. I saw earlier on Twitter, like Netflix will like put out advertisements for movies that have hit the service recently. And one of the little image they put out for The Guest was kind of spoilery in and of itself. I was like, really? Why would you advertise it that way? That's kind of giving away some.
Because they did a really good job of kind of not giving it all away in the trailer.
Yeah.
Which is kind of rare for some of those films. And I think it is probably because it was not like a huge studio film and they felt like they needed to just show their cards to just get as much money as possible. This is a very, filmmaker centric film. So it's like they actually respected him and, did the audience a great service because they knew certain people would seek out this movie, which is very good to see. Not all trailers have to spoil every little thing.
Yeah, but the soundtrack swap does spoil. Well, I mean, it spoils Halloween, but if you haven't watched the original Halloween from beginning to end, I seriously doubt that you're listening to this or having gone to visit our site or YouTube page. But for The Guest, it does spoil some elements, so definitely watch it before you watch that video. But going back to what I was talking about on Halloween, there's the scene where Jamie Lee Curtis busts out the glass pane to get the rake off of the door handle. It's funny because in one shot, like all the window panes in that door are crystal clear and look nice and clean. And then when it gets to the closer up shot, when she like actually hits it and breaks it, like that glass is different looking than the other panes. So it's like obviously swapped out like with easily
sugar glass or whatever.
Yeah, so I just noticed that when I had to look at that scene 100 times. But that was the big video release this past week. One other thing on the site that went up this week was I'd done an article about the top 10 box office horror films of 2015 so far and kind of what that means for horror. And the numbers are pretty interesting because, of course, number one is, well, not of course, but number one was Insidious Chapter 3, which we all liked. If you listen to our podcast, we all thought it was a pretty solid movie. Definitely wasn't just, another franchise cash in that was hastily thrown together and terrible.
It was done right, I think.
Oh, it was
for a third one in the series of a new horror franchise, a newer one.
So
because it was every bit as strong as the first one, if not maybe a little stronger.
Yeah, I preferred over the first one. I would watch this one again over the first.
Oh yeah.
So the actual box office numbers, now these are still, the numbers in progress. Some of these could go up or down. You know what I mean?
Down.
Well, they could.
People got refunds.
Okay. some of these movies could move down if others move up.
But most of these have been in theaters for quite a while now, so there's going to be no major changes.
Yeah,
nobody's going to swap positions. I don't think.
Real quick though, wasn't there like a story in Louisville where like a lady took her kids to watch the Minions or something, and it turned out that it was Insidious 3, and she watched like most of the movie?
So this was blown out of proportion and misreported by a lot of people just to make it sensationalized. I don't think it was in Kentucky, but somebody took their kids to see.
I thought it was in Kentucky.
They took their kids to see Inside Out, the Pixar film, and they went there, and apparently the theater had screwed up, so instead of playing Inside Out, they had played Insidious Chapter 3, but they never even got to the movie. It was just the previews for it, the Sinister 2 preview that shows like kids being killed or something. That's what they were all up in arms about. They never actually saw a frame of Insidious Chapter 3.
Okay, I read something about, there was kids being killed, and I was thinking, when was this happening in Insidious 3?
And it takes like until 30 minutes or like 20 minutes in to start getting like demonic ghost activity. Yeah. So if you sit there for 20 minutes and you don't understand that you're not watching fucking Inside Out Pixar.
This CGI looks really good. Pixar is out on themselves this time.
But look, we watched people like eat. Remember that this is off the wall, but we were at Frisch's before, and this lady ate an entire thing of spaghetti and then bitched about it after she ate it.
No, she ate it, and then she called the waiter over. She's like, this was a child serving. This wasn't an adult serving because I just ate it all. And they're like, well, no, ma'am, that's the adult serving. That was the adult-sized plate. She's like, I don't believe you. And the guy's like, we can sell you another serving.
But it's just like people are dumb enough that like they would go into the theaters and watch that and watch the entire movie.
Long preview.
Yeah, well, and then
why does the title card for this movie say Insidious Chapter 3 and not Disney Pixar Inside Out? But then
Maybe this is Disney short film.
But in the current world, since that happened, I think like the parents blew it up into a bigger thing than it was and tried to say like their kids are traumatized and all this crap. And then of course people that make news articles about it, exaggerate to draw people to read it. But
Clickbait.
let's see. So these box office numbers.
Yeah, back on track.
So number 2 was Poltergeist.
Well, Insidious 3 was 52 million.
Yeah, it was 52 million. Poltergeist was number 2 at 47 million.
Which was terrible.
It's a terrible movie. Like I said, it made less than the original Poltergeist in 81 or 2 or 3. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I
But
feel like 3, but I don't know.
1982. So the original Poltergeist came out in 1982 and made $76 million. This remake, in 2015 made $47 million.
With name recognition now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only reason that movie got made was because it's a
Yeah.
well-known franchise. And I get remaking stuff that, like, underperformed 30 years ago and, like, there was room to come back and remake it and make it better. But Poltergeist was a movie that you were never going to improve or approach the original.
Yeah.
And
This was just a lazy remake. Again, like we said, Insidious was not a cash grab or lazy at all. Poltergeist was the exact opposite of that.
It's like the people that wrote it were just sitting around eating donuts and just hanging out while they were writing the script for it or something.
They just like, hey, we just got a couple million to write this script. Let's just bang it out over the weekend.
They were throwing
But
glaze.
they did it late. Like they wrote it. They did
Sunday
the entire,
night, when it was Monday deadline.
I bet the way that they wrote the script was somebody's kid got a drone and they're like, oh, there's a camera on it. Fuck, we have to put the drone into the ghost world and make a big CGI mess of it.
I forgot all about that.
Like that kid, if he could really fly a drone that well,
Yeah.
he could make a ton of money being like a wedding videographer, like flying the drone down the aisle, and
Yeah.
because it's impossible to fly a drone indoors in tight quarters like that.
Hey, he did it in a ghost world, so
So
with like a iPad or something.
So, like, and two, to be noted, both of these movies, the top 2 movies, Insidious Chapter 3 and Poltergeist, are both PG-13. And for the Insidious, I mean, I guess in Poltergeist too, like, PG-13 horror movies, like, you can make them and make them well. Like, the Insidious franchise was PG-13. That's just because they didn't have any language. I mean, because a lot of these movies that are horror movies, and you watch them, it's like, that really wasn't an R-rated movie aside from, like, the 3 or 4 times they cussed and, like, the one nipple. So if you just take out some elements that aren't, completely necessary to the plot, you can hit PG-13 and make an okay movie. But a lot of times they just water something down and it's terrible, and all the horror fans hate it, and that kind of shoots themselves in the foot. But let's see, number 3 was Unfriended, and it was a little bit lower down, so it's 32 million. And that was a movie that I haven't seen yet. I'm going to watch it here at some point when it's available to rent, and you don't have to buy it for like $15 on video on demand. And that's the one where it all takes place on a laptop screen and like YouTube and Skype and Facebook and stuff.
Which that got pretty decent reviews, right?
Yeah, it actually got some pretty good reviews from different places that I trust. So it's something that seems like it'd be worth checking out. And it was a really cheaply made movie. They made it for, I think, like $1 million. So it wasn't anything that was like a huge price tag, which is just, And then
I mean, we're using Skype right now. We could totally make that movie.
yeah,
It would be the audio version of it.
well, I'd pull the video and it's like it would just be like the box lighting up of whoever's talking. It's like, oh god.
Oh no!
But yeah. So Unfriended, it was a movie that got pretty good reviews and it was effectively marketed at the right people.
And it's definitely teenage focused, I think,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going after the like 17-year-old crowd.
What about the Gallows? Was that one?
So we'll get to that in a minute. Number 4
Simmer
was
down now.
Number 4 was The Lazarus Effect at $25,801,570.
Which Olivia Wilde was in that.
Yeah, it was Olivia Wilde, Mark Duplass, and Donald Glover. And that's another movie where the trailer showed stuff that I really don't think they should have showed. Because it shows like one of the major character, like I don't know if they're major or not, but it shows a character's death in the trailer. It's like, why did you do that? Why would you, show a movie and show these people that people might recognize and then kill them off in the trailer? That's idiotic. But that's another movie where it was, relatively poorly reviewed. It just was relatively cheaply made. So since it made $25 million, it only cost a few million to make. They made a profit on it. The next one is The Gallows at $22 million. And that was one that, I don't know if they showed it in front of Poltergeist. They definitely showed it in front of Insidious Chapter 3 because it's from that Blumhouse, group of...
Blumpkin House?
Yeah, I was just looking at what Insidious is Blumhouse, Gallows, Sinister 2 coming out, The Gift, which I just saw this weekend, Lazarus Effect. They're kind of the king of horror box office right now, it seems like.
They have a very effective system of churning out horror movies that have relatively low budgets that make, a tidy little profit. And The Gallows is just a movie to me that was very, very aimed at the 17-year-old crowd and had a lot of the tropes that I hate. Like, found footage has to do something interesting these days to grab my attention. And a bunch of teens in a high school with the ghost. What was the ghost name? Charlie or something? I don't remember.
Jeff.
Or maybe Charlie was the game with the pencils that all the tweens are playing on Vine.
There was a movie with that ghost Charlie, because I was wondering if that was viral marketing for that. Because that trailer with the Charlie came out shortly after those videos started coming out.
Yeah, and if we haven't talked about that before, that was one of the stupidest things. So you take two pencils, you set them on top of each other, you take like a piece of paper, and then you put like an X on it, and then you put yes and no in the corners, and you set the pencils on it, and then you ask a question, and then one of the pencils will spin, and then everybody's like, and it's like it was like a big thing on YouTube and Vine and Instagram
for about 4 days.
And essentially, it was just because of gravity, right? Like,
Yeah,
it was just
it's just gravity and just the way the
Derek, it
pencils
was
are made.
Ghost.
And it was like supposedly like a Mexican ghost or something. It's like, come on, guys. And then it was a big enough thing. It was actually
Not a Mexican ghost. Those are worse than American ghosts.
there was enough of a thing that there was actually like a religious backlash to it, and people are saying like, don't mess with demonic entities. It's like they're number 2 pencils. Okay, so the number 6 is a movie that we all really liked and reviewed on one of our podcasts. It's actually our most popular podcast, just based on the number of downloads, was It Follows, which made $14 million and $14,674,000. And that was just a movie where initially it was going to be a limited release, like very small number of theater release, and then a concurrent video on demand release where it would all be available nationwide on video on demand. And the limited releases they did so well, they decided to expand it out to be more of a nationwide rollout and added a lot of theaters. So we actually, got to see it in theaters, which is nice. And that was a movie that, all things considered, made a good amount of money for what it was. It made $14 million. And initially it wasn't even going to see a wide release. It would have probably only made $100,000 or so from like a few theater releases and then video on demand. So it got to get released to major theaters.
I feel like that one is kind of, out of all these films, the one that is almost mostly championed by the horror community, like being original, very director driven, out of this year. Of course, the whole horror community isn't behind it all the way, because there's some people that just do not like it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of one of the standout horror films so far this year.
It's one of the ones I think that you'll see people come back to and talk about years from now.
Well, I think another thing too, like compared to like The Gallows and some of the other stuff, it's like more of a uncomfortable movie. Like even though there wasn't a whole lot of horror elements to the movie itself, more of this a suspense thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of dread.
It was just an uncomfortable movie. Like it was uncomfortable, like in an enjoyable way to watch it. But like the movie overall just had an unsettling vibe the entire time, which I think some people might not like that as much because, the kid. I don't know. It just had a really good unsettling thing going on.
Well, I think too, like had this movie been released in 1984, if it had came out before something like Nightmare on Elm Street, like this could have been a huge hit in the 80s. Because just watching this movie, I don't know if they specifically tried to emulate any of the like prior movies specifically. I don't think they did. But it kind of gave me like a Nightmare on Elm Street feel because you have multiple, like in this case, they're mostly, older than 18. They weren't in high school anymore, but you have like, still like young adults trying to figure out these problems that, the parents are no use for, and then they're supernatural. So it kind of had a feeling like that, and there really weren't that many deaths in it. It was just more, it made you like these characters. And then all the suspense and dread came from knowing that, something could happen to them that was terrible.
I do feel like that film was much of an evolution of those films and kind of a comment on them at the same time while being one. So it's like it would have definitely been a different film if it was made during that time, but it kind of fits in as almost like those films are the father and this is the child. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. No,
this
really.
is, this is something born out of that. While it's something totally different, it still has its roots there. But yeah, like you said, this was a very smart film, and there's been a lot of great writing about it. People will definitely come back, which again, if you've seen it and you want to hear a review, we did a podcast on it as soon as we saw it in theaters. And then we also have a video, just like William's soundtrack swap of this with Psycho, where we swapped the soundtracks on those two.
Yeah, so that is definitely a movie worth checking out. It's on video on demand, DVD, Blu-ray, and all that now. So make sure to go track it down if you haven't already.
Awesome score by Disaster Piece.
Yeah, and check that out. There's been a number of movies with good soundtracks, because that has a good soundtrack. The Guest has a good soundtrack, which I bought.
Your next didn't have
Another one on this list has a really good soundtrack. I'll just go and say A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Very different soundtrack, but I loved that soundtrack.
Yeah, so that is now available on Netflix Watch Instant, so you can watch it there if you want to. So going down the list, some of these so after It Follows at number 6, number 7 is The Woman in Black 2, Angel of Death, which made $11 million. I saw the first one, the one with Harry Potter. It was okay. Like, it was like the ghost movies. I don't really, not my genre really. It was okay. I had no interest in seeing the sequel to it that was lower budget without the stars, so not going to be checking that one out. Number 8, The Vatican Tapes made $1 million, 1.576 million. More of that found footage stuff that really doesn't appeal to anyone. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night was, 385,000, so just kind of a limited release movie. Number 10, The Babadook, 208,000 is a relatively limited release that made its biggest mark on video on demand and Netflix. This is another movie that got a lot of critical acclaim throughout the year. We actually did a podcast on this. I think we covered this and the Amityville Horror a few months ago. And I really wasn't too crazy on the Babadook. It just never really grabbed me or everybody else.
I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a bad movie, but speaking of, it's kind of funny. The other day I was at Target and I was buying a DVD or something. There's a couple people in there in the aisle, and they saw the Babadook, and they're talking about how scary it's supposed to be.
It definitely got a lot of buzz before.
Yeah, it got a lot of buzz, but I think while it was like a good movie, like I wouldn't say it was like, I don't really see maybe small children getting scared by it, but like the general adult, I don't think there's much to it.
And to go back to Girl Walks Home at Night, the number 9 one, I really like that movie. It's very much an art house film. Like some of these films, something like Drive. It's like, it's like an art house film, but also, I don't know. It's also commercial, and it's also appeals to a lot of people. This is more of an art house film than that, whatever that means. But it's very much. You got to have patience with this film, and it's very stylized, and it does have some good substance, but it's that Iranian skateboarding vampire film. She didn't skateboard all the time, but it's Anna Lily Amirpour was a writer and director, and I definitely think she's going to do some awesome stuff. Like, this is an awesome calling card for her, and I'm really excited to see what else she does. I think she's doing that cannibal film next, so I will definitely be keeping an eye on her next films.
Yep. Let's see.
And another thing, now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder next time we do this, it might be good to point out too how many theaters they were released in, because it's interesting. Yeah. Babadook made less money than A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, just because all the buzz the Babadook had, and also that is, it's an Australian film, but it's English language, while A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is, I think, all subtitled for the most. I think it's all subtitled. So, it's just interesting, those box office numbers there.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't pull that in. I was just looking at the
I didn't even think about that until now, just in my mind with all the buzz that Babadook had at the beginning of the year. Before I saw it, I thought that was going to be possibly the horror film of the year. It Follows, I was really looking forward to based on the concept. I don't know if I'd seen the trailer for it yet, but it's just interesting. And yeah, the Babadook, that's not going to be one of my best films of the year as far as horror goes.
Well, and too, I think I'd said, so It Follows is kind of the only prestige horror film that kind of had, critical acclaim. that actually made a little bit of money at the theater because they actually released it, in more than just a handful of theaters. But I definitely do think that there's kind of like kind of a ceiling for well-made, horror that's not aimed squarely at the teen market.
Yeah.
Because if you make, something like It Follows, it's probably aimed a little bit more, people who remember the horror films from the 80s and the 90s and stuff and the 70s that influenced this, as opposed to something like The Gallows looks like it's completely targeted at the 2015 tween market. Mm-hmm. But the two, like Netflix and video on demand, I think that's going to continue to make some interesting things happen in horror, just because it's a lot lower barrier to entry to get things distributed. Like when Evil Dead came out, and Evil Dead 2, they were getting unrated because if it was X-rated, they couldn't release it anywhere. Yeah. But in this day and age, you don't have to worry about that. If you get on Netflix and get some type of distribution deal through them, just, make it, put it out, and then done.
Well, that's what Bruce Campbell also brought up in the Comic-Con panel. They said they had to deal with the R ratings and stuff with Evil Dead and everything. They said on Stars, they have no rating at all either, Yeah. They don't really have any regulations on what they can do.
So you will see like a horse sodomize a person and
yeah.
Let's see. So I think actually the number 11 movie, I didn't put it in here, but it was Spring, which is something you did a video on. So there's a lot of art house horror movies or movies that have a horror bent to them that are out there. The box office this year
real quick about Spring. That should be coming out the day this podcast goes up, which would be August 11th. Yeah. And we have a video review on the site for that as well. Just want to throw that in there real quick.
Yeah, so the box office for horror is down a little bit compared to some previous years, because a couple years ago when The Conjuring hit big, it was like a $100 million plus movie. And then I think that was also the same year that the Evil Dead remake came out, right? And it made like about $50 million.
Yeah.
So this year we still have Crimson Peak and some other horror movies come out, towards the end of the year. So it'll be interesting to see how those perform. Because I think, unless you get something that's kind of a franchise movie or just a director with a lot of pull wanting to make a movie, you're not going to see many horror movies with, budgets like Poltergeist at $35 million.
Yeah, they've been pushing Crimson Peak really hard though, marketing wise. Yeah,
I mean, I've loved everything Guillermo del Toro has done, so we'll have to see how that turns out. But I think that can kind of wrap up the box office discussion. And some other news we can talk about is the Nightmare on Elm Street series has been in the news a lot lately, so they're going to reboot it again.
When was the last time they rebooted? That wasn't that many years ago.
2010.
Yeah, so you're talking about 5 years. So they're rebooting a reboot. It's like kind of jumping the shark.
Hey, they're going slower than Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I didn't think about that. And then we also heard a rumor, which I think was just from one site from what Sean was telling us, is there's a rumor that it might just be a CGI Freddy.
So which would have Robert Englund.
I mean, that would just be atrocious.
I mean, it depends on what they would do with it. I don't know. I think people would be more forgivable for some of that if they could get his voice. But there will be some audience members who wouldn't care about his voice, who, if the CGI wasn't done right, which would take a large budget, it maybe fall flat for them. So
I think,
or go ahead.
I think the big thing is that franchise, and I think this is why, kind of like a cautionary tale, is that's the problem with having one of those killers having the big character they do, Like he became such a part of that now, your original audience, the one that's going to probably boost a lot of the actual ticket sales, don't like it. So then they have to kind of revamp it or redo it again. It's like, unless they have Robert Englund, a lot of people aren't going to be happy. And Robert Englund probably doesn't want to, it's just kind of a big issue they've run into now. It seems like that franchise, that they want only one person to be Freddy, and they don't really seem to want him to pass the torch.
Yeah. I mean, he became a fun character. And a lot of horror movies, a lot of popular horror films of this era are a lot of dread and kind of serious. And, it's New Line just try to develop a new horror property that's a fun horror property, Not saying that's why that film succeeded, because the first one was definitely straightforward and stuff, but, take the germ of that idea and try to develop a new property. Like, it's not impossible.
Well, I think part of it too is that like New Line, when they got Nightmare on Elm Street and distributed it, was kind of a fledgling new studio that didn't really have much of a track record, and that's kind of what put them on the map. So that's kind of why they have to keep coming back to that franchise. They're like, well, this made us, damn it, we're going to keep making them.
Yeah.
And like we said, the character of Freddy Krueger is so linked to Robert Englund's performance, and he's moved past it, and he's in his 60s now and doesn't want to do it, that like even though like in the remake it really wasn't good, like it really wasn't the fault of Jackie Earl Haley. Like he did fine.
The other thing too though is like honestly, I mean, honestly, I don't care who plays Freddy. Does it matter to either you all either?
No, I
like,
can get past it. I went to see the remake thinking, hey, this is a music video director. Hope he'll do some interesting stuff. Yeah, I like practical effects, but in a Nightmare on Elm Street world, like CGI could be the best friend of that series based on all the crazy stuff they could do, as long as it looked good. That film has so much imagination that can be done behind it. Not mainly the characters, but just the world and the dream world and stuff.
And,
yeah, like
the way everything
there's so much that could be done with CGI now with that, and they just did not use any of that in the remake.
Well,
would it also be better too for him to take more of like the original and just have a more serious approach to it, or because I didn't see the remake, so it was remake.
It was serious. Yeah, it was very.
It
serious.
was okay.
Well, I think what the original did is it had like a movie that was relatively serious. It wasn't like tongue in cheek, and Freddy was just kind of like dark humor, and he made a few quips here and there. And then in the later series, he became a much more vocal character that talked more and a little bit more on the humor side. Then like Freddy vs. Jason, it was less of a straight up horror movie and more of like a horror fan wish fulfillment of seeing two characters fight. But the new one too, like it was about him raping children, and it's like you don't want to focus on that part of the story.
Yeah. Just do like Sleepaway Camp does and just insinuate that it happens and just go on from there.
The Nathan Thomas Milner, we put up a trailer a while back for Confessions of Fred Krueger, and it's a prequel to the first one. It's a fan film, short film, of course, but I think he pulls a little bit from that because that was the original idea on the script and they got away from it. But he's also got some backlash on the internet because they're like, oh, this isn't Freddy's real backstory, blah, blah, blah. But he pulled from the backstory that what Wes Craven said that his inspiration was for Freddy, which some homeless guy, apparently in a red sweater or whatever, looked in his window one night and it scared the crap out of him.
Yeah, like didn't he say that like some of the stories were in the novelizations of the movies or something?
I think so, yeah. I mean, if you watch the special features on, some of the DVDs or whatever, Wes Craven's told the story plenty of times about the homeless guy and everything. And yeah, I think the novelization had some of that backstory.
So I think that like if you like making a movie about that specifically, that's one thing. But making your tentpole feature have that like as a prominent thing, like did they do it or not? Like I think that's kind of the wrong direction. The direction to go is the terrorizing, the current teens, not going into his backstory, because that just makes everything less interesting if you go into his backstory dramatically and like in a movie. But we'll have to see what happens with that. Like depending on how accelerated the time frame is, if they could get it out in 2016, you could see Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and Friday the 13th all hitting the same year.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm ready for a new Jason. I know they're supposed to be doing the show. I'm ready for all these. If they're good, they're good. If they bomb, whatever, they're going to remake it again. I just want somebody to try it. I want them to do some interesting things with it. I don't want it to keep trying the same thing and failing at the same, kind of concept. I hope this isn't like a rehash of the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street remake, but
they'll just re-release that movie and just have the director's cut.
They'll CGI in over the Freddy that's in there with the CGI Freddy with voice.
That still wouldn't save that movie.
But like the thing with that is though, in order for it to look, if they did go to CGI, it would have to be the same level of CGI that they use for like the Hulk in those movies. And I don't know that they're going to sink the amount of money in to do that that's required because the last movie didn't perform as well as they wanted.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully they don't put any scenes in there with somebody flying a drone through a ghost house and have a tree pick somebody up and just kind of dangle them around
and then set them down.
Gently lay them to the ground.
Also on the site this week, Chad reviewed As Above, So Below.
Or wasn't it Absentia this week? That was
Oh yeah,
that was
I
the
guess
week
it was.
before.
Never mind. Sorry. Yeah, I'm dumb. Let's see. What do we got? What do we got here? We put up there's a new Jason action figure that's very expensive. That looks really awesome too. Put up a post about that. Yeah, Chad reviewed Abstentia. Corey reviewed The Sky Has Fallen from 2009. That was a written review as well. We also did a new promo, which we've hit 1 year now at House by the Video Store. So we did a promo, kind of doing a bunch of quick hits of a lot of the content we've covered.
Yes. So definitely check that out because it's a pretty cool video, and then it kind of gives you a quick glance at the stuff we've done over the past year. Because when you look back at it, we've made over 100 videos in the past year, so
Yeah.
it's a lot of content that's rolled out there. So was there anything else from the site we would talk about before we get into They Live?
I don't think so.
So They Live was a 1998 John Carpenter movie starring Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Rest in peace.
And apparently John Carpenter decided that he wanted Roddy Piper, to star in the movie after he went to a WrestleMania. So it makes sense because
I love John Carpenter so much.
Because professional wrestlers are essentially actors with all this stuff they do in the ring and all their promos, and you have to have acting ability to do that. And I think that Roddy Piper is kind of perfectly cast in this movie because he was just the right level of over the top for what John Carpenter was going for. And I guess we should just do a quick recap of what the movie's about before getting discussing it. It's just where Rowdy Roddy Piper is kind of like a transient independent contractor that goes to work for construction, finds a pair of glasses that show him people that are aliens or kind of monsters amongst everyone who are trying to use subliminal messages to control everybody. And it's about what he does once he finds those glasses. And
Yeah, and it's kind of about suppressing the lower class, and it's about the growth of lower class, and these aliens or whatever are suppressing humans and kind of trying to basically just essentially, what do they say? Do they make them their servants almost? I mean, not exactly. They said, what do they say? They're their livestock.
yeah, and too, there's throughout the movie, there's obey and stuff.
Yeah.
So if you ever seen the street artist Shepard Fairey, he was actually one of the ones that helped develop the Obama Hope posters back in 2008. So that street artist, a lot of his work has obey in it, and they have usually it's with the picture of Andre the Giant. So if you've ever seen that, it's a stencil a lot of people use. That came from They Live, because it's there's a bunch of signs on the buildings obey, or just telling people to conform and to go along. And I think too it's kind of Carpenter taking a jab at commercialization of films and TV, and I would say it played partly into the fact that he didn't have a great experience in the studio system, made some of his movies independently like They Live. So it might have been kind of, talking about that as well. Because in the movie, there's characters who's saying, well, everybody sells out. Why not do it and be on the winning team?
Yeah. There's a lot of social commentary in this film. I feel like it's high on it has a high concept. And it definitely has some social commentary. It kind of throws in your face. But at the same time, I don't feel like I don't want to say it's not paced well, but a lot of stuff around that is kind of thin. Very few things happen in this movie.
Well,
and I'm not saying it's not bad. I really like this movie, but it's interestingly paced.
And his relationship, Roddy Piper's relationship with Holly, which is kind of the female lead, it's very rushed for him to have cared anything about her after she threw him out the fucking window of her condo or apartment or house or whatever. And he flies out this window to 20 feet and then rolls down a hill, and he's okay. And he wears the same plaid shirt the entire movie. So there's that. And then Keith David's in it, who is awesome.
Yeah.
And, he's good in everything he's in.
It's fun.
And, this has one of the most well-known fight scenes where Roddy Piper and Keith David are fighting in the alley because Roddy Piper's trying to make him put on the glasses to see everything. So it's this big, long, drawn-out fight in the alley.
It's, 5.5 minutes?
Yeah. And
this film, like, I don't want to say it's a B John Carpenter film, you know, like a B level one, because it's really good, but it's definitely one that it flies under Halloween, Escape from New York, and The Thing, you know.
Yeah.
But I think for good reason. I think that's about where it falls for me also.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a movie that has fun effects and, you know, has some fun moments, but it's not like an all-time classic of cinema or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And something, too, in there, so there's the guards, and they're using the PKE meters from Ghostbusters as, like, so just reusing those props to use as communicators and things. And, like, one thing you have to take into account in this movie, like, as soon as he wears the glasses and sees that people are, like, these skull-faced alien things, he just starts blasting them away without really knowing, like, if they're good or bad or what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, he becomes a mass murderer pretty early on.
Yeah. That is true.
You're different than me.
Yeah, that's what I mean, too. It's very oddly paced. I like it. It's fun. It's light. Like, it should be light because it is a goofy concept. You know, putting on, you know, these glasses that were developed and everybody's aliens. Like, it's fun. And I think that's why the social commentary doesn't feel too heavy-handed, because it's almost hilarious, this whole situation. But, you know, at the same time, they kind of just fly through the movie. It's a lot of build up to him rolling into town, getting a job at a construction site, going to homeless camp, kind of slowly figuring out, or, you know, there's hints throughout the beginning of the film of there's something going on. There's like some conspiracy. There's hackers hacking in the transmission of the TVs. They take a while to build this up, and it's very interesting. You know, your first time through, you're kind of figuring out what is going on and what this world actually is. And then he gets the glasses, probably like 20 minutes into it, starts blasting people, is on the run because they know it's him, and then fights Keith David for 5.5 minutes.
Well, the one thing I enjoy about that fight the most is, like, even talking about that, like, the pacing of that fight is probably more, I want to not say it's like ultra realistic, but it's probably more realistic to fights in real life because they got tired.
Yeah.
You know, at one point they were just like flopping all over the place, and there's like, because in real life, if you got somebody for, you know, 5 minutes, you're going to be exhausted.
Well,
you know, like,
the only slightly unrealistic thing is, like, the next day there no longer any bruises and they're all fine.
Yeah, because they said this huge dragged out fight and they beat the shit out of each other and they're just fine.
Yeah. And then so the next day they what's happening the next day? All of a sudden I remember they're in the streets.
Yeah, so the next day they end up going to the meeting. And, like, the third act kind of comes back
the end
suddenly.
of the movie's starting already. Like, that's already the third act. Oh, he also flies through a window because he gets what's her name?
Holly.
Holly. You know, he gets her to take him to her house because he's hiding out. She didn't put on the glasses either, which he kind of doesn't force her to. He's like, whatever. And then so she knocks him out of a window and calls the police on him and stuff. And then the third act, he finds out where their base is, what the whole situation is, and then, well, I guess, are we doing full spoilers on this?
Yeah, I guess at this point we can just go into spoilers. I mean, if you haven't seen this movie, go watch it. But I assume anybody who's actually listening to this has seen it, so I don't see why I can't get into spoilers now.
Yeah, and my whole point of explaining this is it's very easy. Like, there's, you know, about 10 plot beats in this whole film, it seems like. And that's it. And then it just kind of ends, which is fun. It keeps it light. It keeps it moving. It's just a very interestingly paced, and it's an interesting Carpenter film.
And it has, like, I think we mentioned before, like, one of the most iconic lines in, like, movies I can remember. And if you've ever seen, like, supercuts of action movies or anything, you've seen that I've come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass and I'm all out of gum. And, like, that part of the movie for him, like, the character theoretically just kind of ad-libbed because he just ended up going into the bank and he had the guns on. Because there's a few scenes where they just kind of go into places with guns. And there's a bunch of civilians and they're like, well, shit. And then they have to figure out what they're going to do now.
Yeah, he has a bunch of just random catchphrases that are pretty great. It seems totally wrestler of him.
Yeah, so there's, you know, different subplots going on, and there's interesting elements, but like I said, like the third act kind of just creeps up on you. Like when he goes to the meeting, like it just kind of devolves directly from that into the last 15 minutes of the movie. But
yeah, and like I said, I almost think the pacing works for it. But at the same time, it kind of holds it back from being a bigger film than it could have been. There's not like the big hurrah ending. I mean, he wins at the end. He shoots the dish with a baby pistol. For some reason, Keith David just gets executed like
off screen,
snap of a finger. It's just the screen flashes. He's dead immediately out of nowhere. The girl turns on him, and then they're up on their roof. There's no big like dialogue exchange, really. There's not like a huge speech or anything. It's essentially he shot the dish, shoots the girl, and he's laying on the roof.
Yeah.
And you assume he won, but they kind of gave him the speech about they're all over. There's nothing you can do.
Well, then the funniest scene of the movie happens at the end, like when there's the one gratuitous breast shot of the woman on top of the guy when they're making sweet, sweet love. And it's after they destroy the dish, so everybody sees everyone as they are. So she like kind of opens her eyes, and the TV's on in the background. She sees like the TV, like the skeleton face guy. And then she looks down, and the guy that she's banging is like, "What's wrong, baby?" So then she's like, "Oh no, I've been banging a skeleton."
I almost forgot about all that ending scene. Yeah, the ending scene sequences are well done too. They're funny.
See, the first time I watched this was on like AMC, so I think the ending scene was like drastically cut down from that.
Yeah.
Like I remember like the girl, because that's the first time I watched this AMC, which is a long time ago. It was like a John Carpenter marathon before. And but I just remember like the scene that it was a lot different than that. I think they just showed the guy on the news. I don't think they showed the girl or the guy at all on that one.
This was a movie that had a budget of $4 million, estimated of $4 million according to the Internet Movie Database.com. And then it grossed $13 million, so it probably made a little bit of a profit, but it was considered a flop. And there was just a long stretch where John Carpenter didn't have many movies that did well at the box office.
Well, yeah. I think too though, this is one of those movies where like you gotta get into like a weird area of what the movie actually is. Because like when John Carpenter kind of like his early 80s was John Carpenter, like late 70s, early 80s. You had the Halloweens and you had the Thing. It was kind of like his big time. And then when Escape from New York,
the Thing was a box office flop.
Yeah, it was.
So his biggest hit was Halloween. I think he said he made more money from Halloween than anything else in his career. Then the next kind of biggest hit was Escape from New York. And then he had, a lot of like the Fog was a moderate success. It really wasn't, a huge movie or a bad movie, and that's one that people don't really talk about that much because it was okay. Nothing,
It was just,
some people love that movie. I don't love it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Then then he had The Thing, which was a flop and actually critically panned when it was released, but thankfully everyone came to their senses and realized like, no, it's amazing.
Like I said, I think that movie too is kind of a movie that was maybe, I don't know if I'm gonna say it's ahead of its time. It was just different.
Well, I think too it was hurt that it released the same year as E.T.
Yeah,
so people definitely
well, they even talk about that in the commentary of the movie. Is like E.T. kind of softened everybody up, and E.T. was like this nice alien, and the aliens in the Thing were completely opposite.
Swallowing people's arms.
Yeah, swallowing people's arms, and tentacles and dogs and.
To be fair, when I was a little kid and I saw E.T., for some reason, E.T. scared the shit out of me. And I always had nightmares about E.T., like one of my cousins, like they had like a sectional couch. And I always had this like dream that I would get thrown behind the couch and E.T. would be back there and he would like try to touch me with his glowing finger. And I had
only some deep, dark secrets. I think you're
like not in a sexual way, but just like in a scary, like E.T. Yeah. So E.T. can be scary, but and I'd only seen bits and pieces of it, and I was like, man, that's a creepy little creature. But so The Thing was another movie that thankfully everyone has come around on and realized how good it was and influential it was, and that's kind of a lot of Carpenter's career. Like Big Trouble in Little China was a movie that was kind of a flop. It didn't do well at the box office.
Like I said, I think with a lot of John Carpenter movies, you just have like his, like you said, his biggest movie is Halloween. Then maybe a lot of people followed him because of that. And then you get to those movies where there's different, like I think it's kind of hard to say. Like, he's not really a horror director. He just had so many different styles of movies because he even did Sold on Precinct 13, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that.
So I mean, you have that, and then you have They Live, and you have The Thing, and they're all just so different. None of them are the same. So I think it's sometimes too that the not having a certain type of consistency hurts what he does as well too. Because if somebody was a fan of Halloween, then they go watch The Thing, like, what the hell is this? Or they go,
I think John Carpenter too is kind of, to some extent lamented before that kind of like the movies are his big successes early on, kind of painted him into a corner of only doing like certain types of movies.
Mm-hmm.
which he didn't typically do though, because Halloween was like his really only. I know he had The Thing, but that's more of like a sci-fi. It has a lot of horror elements to it, but it's more of a sci-fi alien movie than it is a horror movie.
Well, I think there was too, like, he kind of got painted as like a fantasy horror action director that was more like in, genre cinema and didn't really get like, big mainstream pictures or like a drama or anything like that. So, he had a pretty varied career. And two, one of the most interesting things he has done in recent years was his episode of Masters of Horror, but that was, in the 2000s. But that's, if you have Hulu Plus, that's all available now to go watch. His episode was Cigarette Burns, and it starred Norman Reedus, pre-Walking Dead.
I actually liked John Carpenter's Vampires. I thought that was pretty fun.
James Woods.
Yeah, James Woods was great in there. And I
Laura
really liked
Palmer.
In the Mouth of Madness, which was after They Lived as well.
Yeah, so you have like, so his, I forgot what it was called, his trilogy of apocalypse films was The Thing,
Was it Prince of Darkness?
Prince of Darkness, and then The Mouth of Madness.
Which I like all those movies.
But then he also made Escape from L.A., Ghost of Mars. And didn't he make some movie called The Ward? I think I've seen bits and pieces
and
of
I heard it wasn't good. I was hoping that was 2010.
Yeah.
Village of the Damned, the mid-90s, which I never saw that.
So, overall, big fans of John Carpenter, but some of his movies kind of missed the mark. But They Live was one that definitely didn't miss the mark. It was a good movie, just, it's not his best movie, but it's definitely something that's definitely worth watching.
It's not Escape from L.A.
So I guess we can just kind of all go around and give any, kind of final thoughts on They Live. So I guess we can start with Sean.
Yeah, I hadn't watched this movie in probably almost 10 years because it's not one of the Carpenter films I kind of go to, like The Thing or Big Trouble in Little China. But I did really enjoy watching it again, and it's he did an awesome job shooting this film. You can tell this is an experienced John Carpenter, and I watched the HD version, which for the first time, because like I said, I hadn't seen the movie in like 10 years, so it was in standard definition, and it looked beautiful. Like, I thought it was awesomely shot. It's funny. Roddy Piper, I don't know if they limited his dialogue, because it's kind of hard to paint the picture of his character. Like, you kind of get an idea of who he is based on the little dialogue that he has, but it's still very much like, it's almost the whole plot of the movie where you get the basic ideal of it, and there's a concept of these glasses and the aliens, and there's a concept of who Roddy Piper's playing. And there's just enough there that it keeps it fun and light, and it's an awesome movie just to throw on and see Roddy Piper get thrown through windows, fight Keith David, have catchphrase, chew bubblegum and kick ass, blast people away. It's definitely a fun movie. I feel like it could have been more, but it could have been so much less too. Like, John Carpenter, he really did an awesome job with this film. It could have felt really flat. And it's such an interesting concept. I know it was based on a short story, but again, it's almost, it's almost like a zombie film or a vampire film or werewolf film, because it has all these interesting rules to it, to the universe and to the world. And it's kind of fun when movies build up those concepts. And this does a great job at it. It just kind of is limited on the other aspects of it. So go watch They Live.
So, Derek?
Yeah, like I said, I remember the first time I watched this movie, which is probably the last time I watched it before now for the podcast, It was like I'm 25 now. Last time I remember watching was AMC, and so I was like when I was like 10 or 11. But it's a good movie, and like I think I remember when I first watched it. I didn't really know Roddy Piper was in it. Because at that point in time, I think he was in his wrestling day. He was popular in the 80s, early 90s, I think. So that was kind of a little bit before the wrestlers I knew. But it's definitely a fun movie, especially when he puts the glasses on. And like, I think still the go-to scene in that movie for me is like the Keith David fight, It is so long and ridiculous and over the top. And they're getting smashed through, like, they break the car window too, doesn't he? Like, apologizes to him.
Sorry.
He's like, I'm sorry, I'll pay for that. I just love that scene because here you're like beating the shit out of each other. And I don't know, that to me is like one of the scenes in movies that stuck out for so long because it's just ridiculous. And like you said, as soon as he gets the glasses, he just starts killing people and he really doesn't ask a whole lot of questions. Which I think too, that's
again, he's there to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and he's all in the bubble gum.
So like Sean was saying, that kind of speaks to his character too, because he doesn't get a whole lot of dialogue, but he automatically like, you're different,
You're different.
Yeah,
There's a whole nother level of social commentary there.
And like,
you're not the same as me. You're gonna die. And it's just like, I don't know. It's a fun watch. It's a little bit different. Like I said, it's kind of a weird movie because it's not. Stuff happens, but not a lot happens. I don't know.
It's unexpectedly paced. Like it's not a traditional like, okay, well, we're gonna follow these story beats of a typical action movie or whatever, which I kind of like about it.
I do like it too. But if you break it down to like, because I know they're completely different style alien movies, but if you look at The Thing, you look at that, like The Thing had, it was paced pretty well, and everything had like it just seemed like
there was different acts of that film that were
there's different acts.
And
but this one had
they
like
were evenly paced or
evenly paced. And this one, like you break this down to 3 acts, but
and the last one's far shorter than the rest of them.
But I think it's like one of those movies. If you haven't seen it, you really should watch it because it's very enjoyable. Roddy Piper's pretty cool in it. Keith David's awesome as he always is. The little skeleton creature guys, the aliens, they look pretty cool. They're pretty different.
Awesome design, like. So much about this film they got right. And
like the signs were interesting. There's just a lot of like little stuff in it that made the movie just interesting to watch. It's not as action packed or, you're not going to get some of the visuals you got from movies like from The Thing of John Carpenter's, but it's still a fun watch. I remember when I watched it when I was young. It's one of those movies I feel like probably I should watch it once more than I have because I've only watched it probably twice. And the first time was been 14 or 15 years ago, but it's not like you said, it's not Carpenter's, it's not his strongest film set, I don't think, but it's definitely worth a watch. If you haven't seen it, if you're looking for like a good movie, I wish it was on Netflix or something. That would be a little more easier to access.
I was actually going to buy it right after Roddy Piper died. I was like, I'll do something for the site where they live because I do like the movie a whole lot, and it was going to take like a week and a half to get it from Amazon or from Scream Factory. So I just bought it on Vudu, and it was like $14 for the HD version, 13 or $14, and it looked great.
I just watched it on YouTube.
Yeah, I may or may not have watched an HD copy on YouTube.
But this one I can't remember if it's sped up or not because this goes to a couple podcasts ago when we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I think we all watched it on YouTube.
No, I didn't because I couldn't handle the sped up version.
Yeah, like we watched it on YouTube, and William did, and when I watched with my girlfriend, we were both watching it, and it took me a minute to realize it was like sped up.
Well, because it
was
plays,
like Sweet Home Alabama. It was like
that's when I could tell too.
I was like, what the hell is good? At first, I thought it was like some shitty cover of the song. Then I realized like, oh, it's just sped up a little bit.
Well, the version of They Live that I watched at least was normal speed because the music sounded.
Yeah, it wasn't. That's why
I started watching it, the one we found on YouTube, but I realized that when he was like on the construction site with the hand, whatever, he was going really fast, and I'm like, oh, did they speed it up to like try to pretend like he was working really quick, and then Keith David was working really fast? I'm like, wait a second, they sped this movie up.
Yeah, it's funny because and this is completely irrelevant. But I bought a house a couple weeks ago, and we were painting the house. We had some stuff on the background. My girlfriend loves Golden Girls, and she's watching. If anybody's familiar with that, and she's watching it, and they sped up the episodes. I guess people just speed stuff up on YouTube.
Yep. They just got that out. They did that with
it's just funny.
And
It's just funny to me though when you hear like the music, because a lot of times in the actual dialogue you really can't tell the difference, but when you hear the music, you're like, oh shit, they sped this up.
which I think Golden Girls, when that aired, the commercial breaks may have been different then. Actually, I think that was a years prior to that. But shows used to be actually longer, and then of course they wanted to put in more commercial breaks, so they made the show shorter and the commercial breaks longer. So some of those old shows, they've either edited them down or I think sped them up. But I think they actually took scenes out of some of the really old stuff, which is a shame.
Yeah, I think too, like even stuff like Seinfeld, they've trimmed stuff out for the TV syndication versions.
Yeah, and sped it up.
But back to the They Live. The one thing too that's kind of sad, especially with Roddy Piper passing away, is aside from They Live, he never really got kind of like a showcase movie that was kind of in the general consciousness. Because I've heard people talk about the movie he was in before about the frogmen. So
I don't think I've seen that.
yeah, so I've seen stuff from it, but like he never really got another big franchise, and I think he needed like the right director to use him properly, and to kind of write him like this movie where it's not like super dialogue heavy or anything like that. I mean, because he totally could have been in The Expendables. I mean, those movies, and
he is very entertaining to watch on camera in this film. Like he has great expressions. He's kind of comedically, like with his body language, he's funny. He's not like he's a terrible lead at all. But
yeah, I mean, because you look at some of the actors who had big careers, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, as great as he is in some movies, he doesn't have a lot of acting ability. Mm-hmm. Like Roddy Piper, I think at least had that much acting ability.
Yeah.
And it's just had They Live been a bigger hit, he might have had a different career trajectory.
Let's put it like this: he's no Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. So
real quick, I was going through IMDb on Roddy Piper's acting credits, and I'd played Saints Row 4, and I was kind of excited for that because I don't know if you guys played it, but in the game, Keith David plays President Keith David, and he's like with you, and he's like kicking ass and everything, from what I remember. But apparently, Roddy Piper is in the game also as a voice. I forgot all about that.
And he also he's on a couple of episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia as the Maniac, so that's kind of fun to watch. But just kind of reiterate, They Live, I think, is a good movie. I enjoy it. It's definitely not on the top shelf of Carpenter's work, up there with Halloween and The Thing and Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China. It's kind of like kind of a second tier movie that's still pretty good. Mm-hmm. Definitely one of those better movies from the late '80s that had somewhat of a social message. So I think we just all liked it. It's not our favorite John Carpenter movie, but it's in the top half, so that's better than most. Yeah. So I think we can wrap up our discussion of They Live and just kind of quickly go through all the social media plugs and everything. To start off with, if you like the podcast, make sure you go on iTunes and give us a review. You can say what you like about the podcast, or preferably not what you don't like, but whatever. Feedback is feedback. For all the stuff we're doing, you can always go to housebythevideostore.com. Follow us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Vine, on Instagram.
Obey, follow.
Well, yeah, obey, question mark, please, ... follow us. And you can find all those links from housebythevideostore.com, so you don't have to memorize all of them. And it's also the best place to find all our content, because sometimes the social media stuff or video stuff, copyright stuff can kick in. Like right now, the guest and Halloween soundtrack swap had been blocked worldwide, but we countered the claim because it's fair use, but who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. And our other one totally got blocked from YouTube, so that's on Vimeo. But like I said, if you just go to the site, all of it is on there.
Yes. And if you want to follow any of us individually on the internet and see what we're doing, you can follow me on Twitter at Will_droid.
And I'm at BlevinsSean. Derek?
And I'm Instagram at MetaWorldDerek.
I thought you were going to say, I'm Instagram.
I am Instagram.
What's your Twitter again? Because some people may want to tweet at you at least.
Yeah, my Twitter, which I'm starting to use that more. It's at DWill1990. And it's no. What am I saying? It's at DWCap90.
Okay.
And it's CAPP.
And also, I typically tweet for the site. And for these podcasts, I've been putting up the images that William has made, and we'll be tagging all three of us. I always tag all three of us in them. I have been recently. So if you want to follow us independently, our tag should be in there if you're on Twitter.
Tweet.
Yep.
So that will bring this episode of the House by the Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video